Welcome to Design with Ren, conversations on design, systems, leadership, and the people shaping how we live, work, and move through the world. I'm Ren Scott, and today's guest is Rama Gheerawo, a leading voice in inclusive design and former director of the Helen Hamlin Center for Design at the Royal College of Art in London, where we met.
A few years
So fun.
ago, university degrees.
Yeah, it was so wonderful
Yeah.
to be in touch and to see you again, my friend. You look exactly the same as you always did and do for more than 2
Likewise,
decades. Not to date us.
not to date us, maybe a little bit more hairy on the chin, but
Yeah.
a little more of winter thermals around the face.
Well, it's so nice to see you again. And
Yeah,
since we,
yeah.
first met for more than 2 decades, you've been helping shape how design can better reflect complexity of human experience. Someone moving conversations beyond accessibility alone and towards, having people be able to participate with dignity. You're leading leadership and system level change. Your work spans not only healthcare, but also education, government, public services, and industry. You're always asking an important question. Who are we designing for? Who are we leaving out? Rama, welcome.
It's a great pleasure to be here. It's funny when you a potted bio about yourself, sometimes you don't always recognize it, but I recognize that one.
Yeah. Good. Want to get it right because I know as time passes, you're doing so much and expanding your sharing your skill set and your vision. So please feel free to fill in the blanks for me and let's take this
Sure.
conversation where it needs to go. We want to focus. I don't want to focus on the past, but the future as you see it, and take us
Yeah.
along the way.
Happy to get into it.
Yeah. So you've spent much of your career shaping conversations around inclusion and leadership through design. And was there an early moment where you realized design could influence more than just products?
What I've realized in life, there's no single road to Damascus moment. There may be single points of inspiration, but a kind of massive conversion isn't the usual experience for all of us. So I think there's a couple of different moments when you realize the power of design. So I think one of them was when I won a very coveted job when I was 19, working in car design for a British car company, who interestingly enough now don't exist any longer. They, working in their design studio, gave me a huge insight into the world of design. And I realized I wasn't nearly scratching the surface. So after 10 weeks, I resigned. And everyone thought I was crazy. You beat 200 people to get this job, and you resigned after 10 weeks. That was because I realized design can do so much more. So I sort of went off to discover that. Another moment years later was when I'd had a particularly difficult couple of years. I was, and I mean that professionally, like with the work. We were working on projects in the Middle East with migrant workers. We were looking at gender exclusion. We were looking at age exclusion. And it got too much for me. And I ended up crying in the shower because when you're in the shower, I think no one can see your tears. No one can see your tears through their own, and no one can see your tears through the rain. And the shower is like, it's a rainstorm indoors. And it was an emotional expression. And that was the point when I realized, what can I as a little designer do? And the question resounded through me, and an answer came bounding back, which was, if you can redesign leadership, you redesign everything. Change leadership and you change everything. So it was another moment when I radically realized the power of design. And there's many moments in between, doing my own work, my own project at the Royal College of Art where we met. I was looking at school furniture as one of my main final year projects. Where do you learn to sit badly? You learn to sit badly at school. And back pain and back suffering is one of the main reasons people are off work. And in the under 30s, it's a main challenge to the quality of life. It's not colds or flus, it's back
Hmm.
pain or kind of musculoskeletal pain. So that was a point when I realized with design, you can build bridges or you build barriers, you can cage or you can open the cage for the human spirit. And that's the particular speciality I call inclusive design.
Yeah, it's so interesting that talking about your understanding of what design was when you first started and how that's changed over time. Why do you think that, like, these moments that you've talked about kind of like have stayed with you? Like, what did that kind of like reveal to you reflecting back on it now?
I think if I look within my heart, there's something that echoed inwards. So you change yourself and then you can change what's around you. But it starts with yourself. Put on your oxygen mask first before you
Hmm.
help others. So those particular moments were very singular because they reflected something deeply within me that changed me. And when that happens, you remember it. It's like a marker point. It's like a
Hmm.
milestone. So that and what followed was important. I think also the fact that they weren't just of their time. They held a truth that's held for many years. They
Hmm.
spoke a truth that's held for many years. So when something is that, when it's not eroded by time, when you hear a truth or you say a truth or you reflect on a truth that's truly timeless, you remember it.
Hmm.
So there's my sort of emotive, spiritual, personal answer, um,
Yeah.
to that. I was kind of hoping we'd go there on this podcast, to be honest, given our conversations from back in the day.
Hmm.
It's not just all about productivity, and it's not just all about some kind of PowerPoint purpose. It is about what changes your heart, what evolves your spirit, what speaks to your mind, and what can your hands create. It's about all of those things. It's about what vibrates and resonates with your energy. And those
Yes.
statements did.
Many times I will reflect on conversations that we've had. And in particular, what will always stand out to me is your effort, and as it comes across again now, to really connect with people on a human basis. And regardless of, barriers that people have or that we may have through technology, as far as being able to make that happen, is that you look to create experiences and also share how to do that with others. So kind of like a core belief that you feel kind of sits beneath everything that you do.
Yeah. Um, I think there's a couple of things here, and various internet wits and various songs have represented it.
Hmm.
So one internet wit said you could remove all HR books and replace it with two words: be kind. So that speaks to empathy, and empathy speaks to love. And there's a song by the Jamaican singer Collie Buddz with a Z, where
Mm.
he talks about show love. If you can't think of doing anything, show love. And these may sound like extraneous concepts, but there's a poem by Rabindranath Tagore that I quote often, which is: Power said to the world, you are mine, and she imprisoned him on her throne. Love said to the world, I am yours, and she gave him the freedom of her house. So quite a lot of what we look at within design, within the context design lands in, so the context of the corporation, of society, it's everything is plagued with power plays, even conversations. And I think it's one of the things I remember about us. We would
Hmm.
have so much laughter. There wasn't a power play there just was. So the core thing beneath me all is I used to have a phrase. It was almost like my badge that I was here to serve society. And then I realized in my 20s, people can take massive advantage of that. And, I'm still learning that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not so much about serving, it's more about being in service. And I think that leads to where I'm at now, which is improving life through love. I think that would be a core value. And I'm not talking about the romantic love of Hollywood and Bollywood. I think when you say love, people look at their shoes, don't they? And when you say love in a boardroom context, people think, who is this numpty that's come in there? And for those of you watching this internationally, numpty is a sort of friendly, a softer word for idiot. That we use it's like Muppet. If you've ever watched the Guy Ritchie movie,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
Muppet. Um, so yeah, you got to love the English language and how it evolves. But one of the things with the English language that I love is, and many other languages, ancient Greek, for instance, they
Mm-hmm.
talked about having a love for things, a love for the world around you. You could have a love for the sky, a love for a stone, a love for doing a podcast, a love
Mm-hmm.
for singing, a love for travel. It's not just romantic love that most songs talk about. It's about widening things. And, again, English has a wonderful expression because when you do this work of design, you show a little bit of your soul, you show it on your sleeve because you show your work, you show your heart, you have to be able to prepare to show vulnerability, which incidentally is why I think creatives make great leaders, because you don't hide behind rhetoric or performance, you have to show of yourself. But the
Mm-hmm.
phrase I was thinking of is, how do you move into love? And in English, there's this phrase, you fall in love. Fall. You don't think yourself into love. You don't plan yourself into love. You don't PowerPoint yourself into love. You fall into love. And some part of you, I think it means you fall away. But some part of you also has to let go of barriers and, dreams of power or dreams of control. Um, and that's not to say you don't have responsibility for anything or you don't lead anything. But if you led with love rather than power, wouldn't the world be a different place? Wouldn't we see different geopolitical trajectories happening in ways that might be different
Mm-hmm.
if we didn't feel the need to go and claim and demand? And I'm not even just talking about political strategies. I'm talking about in offices and families. I'm sitting here on this grey sofa. 3 weeks ago, I had a conversation with a friend that was really difficult. And a week later, I had another conversation with him. And he said, because of the situations in his life, he realized that he was trying to reclaim power in his life through holding power over all those around him. And what a beautiful realization. Hats off to him for acting, realizing it and acting on it. When we apply a lot of this conversation to design, it's what I was trying to reach in my book, um, Creative Leadership. It was published by Penguin last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you can stand the sound of my voice, it's an audiobook. There's also an ebook and a paperback. And, it's distributed around the world because Penguin are Penguin. And I think when you start to think of love, it really starts with an attitude. So what's the attitude that you start to show? What's the small ripples around you that um, build up into a tidal wave that you may call love? And that tidal wave called love lifts all boats. So in the book, we called love empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's balanced and collaborates and conspires and converges and even conflicts sometimes with two other values, which are clarity and creativity. So it's empathy, clarity, and creativity. And these are three values-based leadership models. for
Mm-hmm.
us to take forward. They are also mapped onto three types of yoga, which is bhakti yoga, devotion, empathy. There is jnana yoga, knowledge, clarity, and karma yoga, action, creativity. Or the other way of thinking of it is head, heart, and hand. So this is, I think this is a really abundant landscape for us to progress who we are and how we are. And that idea of talking about little ripples is, where is your level of empathy right now? Or creativity or clarity, and how might it change? Do you become more empathic when you're with your kids and less empathic when you're with your teen? Or vice versa, as some people have said.
Mm-hmm.
They come to work to relax. God knows what's going on in their houses. But the book starts off with the phrase, this is a story for three types of people: established leaders, emerging leaders, and the biggest group of all, those who were never built to be leaders. I sit firmly in that group. So it's an honest confession that I needed to start lots of little ripples in order to start thinking and talking about this and acting about it, because no one wanted to talk about empathic design or inclusive design. All of that was a load of nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something for us to really look at. How do we flip the script on a world that may find it difficult to speak about these things in a business concept? I think it is
Mm-hmm.
changing. We did a piece of work once, asking people what do they want from leadership. And no one said, I want a micromanager who'll, you know, I want a bully. I want
Mm-hmm.
someone who won't listen to me. I want a micromanager who'll sit over me and tell me what to do and how to hold my pencil and when to drink my cup of tea. People said they wanted, they wanted open listening. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted empathy. They wanted diversity. They wanted active listening. And I think this is now coming through again and again. And we see it generationally as Generation X move into senior positions. They want to
Mm-hmm.
do things differently. You know, they remember what it was like for them cutting through the ranks. And Gen Z, as they walk into the workplace, they're asking for a very different criteria. So,
Yeah.
Gen X, Gen Z designers, and sandwiched in between the two of that, millennials.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this sort of transition point between the two, but everyone wants something that's different. And I'm not being ageist here. I'm not saying older is bad and younger is good. Those who are baby boomers and, moving through the retirement spectrum, so open to the language of love, of kindness, of empathy, of compassion, and all of those things that we need in life. And here's a little secret: designers have this in spades, if only we were allowed to progress it and project it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So designers have it in spades if we're only allowed to project it, extend it, be part of that team or organization that has influence or can make impact. When I love how you framed empathy, it's not just one thing, not just putting yourself in the
Mhm.
shoes of another, or that is this idea of kind of extending it through love.
Yeah.
You kind of all encompassing in as to what you've included in this idea of empathy. What I'm thinking, I'm curious your thoughts on this, is like that leadership, it also, yes, empathy, like is empathy enough, or does leadership also require kind of like discomfort and tension? Like
Yeah.
having more difficult conversations that allow people to kind of move even past what, kind of like the move past transactional relationships to more, things that are more transformative. What does good creative leadership look like today versus what it might have looked like even a year ago?
Yeah, great question. So, empathy, one of the mistakes we make is when we hear empathy or love, people think of some cartoon where you have unicorns dancing around a sunset or everything just being in total harmony. But the truth is, in this world, in one layer that we look at, everything is in flux, everything is in movement.
Hmm.
And empathy is like engine oil. It's best when the engine's moving, it keeps things moving. And an engine, an internal combustion engine, will see explosions, water, fire, fuel, bang, all happening. But empathy is the thing that makes that happen in a way that is progressive. So I don't think empathy is harmony necessarily. The whole team went home and they were all happy. That's harmony. Empathy is that the team had a crap day and they need different things. So tomorrow, even though I'm not the team leader, I will bring in donuts for everyone and I'll ask the team leader, can we have 10 minutes to really talk about what's going on?
Hmm.
So empathy is very powerful when you align it to clarity. Empathic clarity is one of the most powerful things because clarity is a knife. If you only had clarity, you'd be a dictator. Dictators are very clear about what they're doing, but empathy gives a handle to that blade so you can actually use it. Because otherwise, we all know people who are so intellectual, but they're abrasive because
Hmm.
they're only intellectual and they've got to be right or they'll debate everything. I came across a guy who was debating tomatoes with his wife. He was in a workshop. And I said to him, for the weekend, your homework is to put clarity to one side. Because you could be right. Maybe she could buy cheaper tomatoes or more ripe ones, whatever. And what are your kids about? And couldn't tell me. So I said, have you listened to them? No, he's always telling them what to do. So I said, your homework this weekend is to be totally empathic. And by that, I mean, we're going to activate your empathy through listening. So you're going to listen more than you speak. So when he came in on Monday morning, this was a workshop I was running in the Middle East. And I said, what happened? Mohammed was his name. I'm not
Hmm.
breaking any GDPR. It's a very popular name. My wife turned around and said, who are you and what have you done to Mohammed? And because he
Wow.
wasn't debating, like dinner wasn't a debate and a debate she hadn't signed up to. And then he said to me, yeah, my 15-year-old daughter, I hadn't realized how funny she is. Like she is
Wow.
hilarious. And actually just being quiet and asking her questions, she said something and it was funny. So I laughed. And she said, Dad, you've never laughed at my jokes. And he was like, I
Wow.
didn't know you were telling jokes.
I didn't know you were telling jokes and that you were funny until I actually stopped
Yeah.
talking over top of you.
Yeah. And so, when he came back in, his homework was to enable his team. So we set them a task and all of them just sat there, okay, looking at him, what should we do? And he turned around, he looked at me and turned around and he was like, so Fatima, what do you think? And she nearly fell off her chair because she'd obviously never been asked that question. And she sort of mumbled something and then built in confidence because he was listening and
Hmm.
encouraging. And then she came up with something, and then he was like, what do you think? What do you think? What, Ahmed, what do you think? Da, 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 da. And then he said, so we've got a number of ideas on the table. Which one are we going to do? And they said, aren't you going to decide? He goes, so I was so proud of him in that moment because he exhibited active empathy. So the problem
Hmm.
is when we think of empathy as harmony or as peace, this world isn't about peace. It's about something else. And I'll come to that in a minute. There is a little mini story there. But, um, you know, my family home when I was younger, mum and dad opened it to from all the world. So breakfast wasn't the biggest house, but it was huge in heart. And you never knew who you'd wake up to breakfast with: an American professor, a national treasure from India, sculptors, artists, you know, was very, very full. And one day there was a Sanskrit priest there. I was probably by this time in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s. So I was back home. Yeah, I'd gone back home after university. And he said to me, what do you wish for in this world? And I thought, I need a minute to think about this. So I said, obviously, you're asking a question to which you have an answer, because priests normally do.
It's like he anticipating what you're going to say because the question has been practiced on many people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fine art. And I was like, so what is the answer you want to give? And it'll give me a chance to think. And so he started speaking and he said, I wish for peace. I wish for world peace. I wish people could be peaceful in their hearts and act from peace and da 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 da. And he had a beautiful lyrical answer. I mean, the guy could chant Sanskrit. You can imagine the lyricism. And I sat there and I said, I have my answer for you. And I said, I don't wish for peace. Peace would be nice, but I don't think that's the purpose of this world. The purpose of
Mm-hmm.
this world and of all of us is progress. That we are here to progress, we're here to learn. And I wish that the progress is as peaceful as it can be, as harmonized as it can be, but it's not always going to be, because it's painful to be born. It's painful for a mother and it's painful for the baby. I mean, it's painful sometimes to watch a bird cracking an egg and taking its first breath. It's painful to watch the first flight of a bird. Progress is pain, and
Mm-hmm.
progress sometimes requires pain. So going back to your question, I think that's encapsulated in the heart of empathy. It's not just about peaceful sitting on a beach, drinking some kind of cocktail, or, getting to the end of the day and flopping down on the sofa. I think you find stillness is a better word for me than
Mm-hmm.
peace, but find stillness within the movement, stillness within yourself as you move forward and as you step forward.
As you're talking, I'm just reflecting on how I love metaphors and providing, and having meaning for those. Well, you do much more than that. It's like you take the word and, provide it through examples of real stories, things that have been your experience. I get kind of like
Yeah.
shivers down my back as you're talking. I feel you. I feel that moment. I feel the change and the impact that you've had within yourself, but more importantly, the change that happened for that person because of your very intentional, the things that you value, the things that you want to share, kind of what you're like, why you do this in the first place is truly extended through those that allow themselves, such as Muhammad did. And then you had also the experience with the priest as well. That's another one. What have you had to unlearn as a leader,
Sure.
if that's the right term?
I love unlearn. A friend of mine posted something that was really thought provoking around unlearning, that we need to unlearn behaviors, that we need to, um, and I think there's something there about getting stuck in a particular way of doing it, stuck in the groove. I like to think of it like, those old trains, the steam trains with the rails, and they just do this. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes our lives are just doing this. But if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And another person in a conference, so this is someone else, not me, they said, we're trying to deal with 21st century problems
Mm-hmm.
with 27 century frameworks from 19th century institutions. And that's a challenge, because bringing in the word design and creativity here, creativity is educated out of us. And I said that recently with an academic leader on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I'm dismayed that you think the education system is not that, and is not creative. And I said, well, when you get to bachelor's, master's degrees, yeah, you're starting to ask for original thought, but by and large in school, 1 + 1 = 2. But I came across a small child who was saying 1 + 1 is 11 because it's two ones, and she could prove it because she
Yeah.
picked up the two sticks that her
Yep.
father had, the two ones. She said, no, 1 + 1, take this one and this one, 11. Or well, she didn't say 11, it's two ones. So
Mhm.
1 + 1 is two ones. And she's technically not incorrect. In factually, creatively, she's, she's right. So I was like, watch that one. She's going to be a great designer. In fact, she's a great designer now. So I think this idea of unlearning, there was a couple of things I had to learn in order to unlearn. So number one is that creativity is educated out of us. So educate it back in. And what is the weird thing that might be in your brain, the weird connections I was making, the fact I do love words, and I love the fact that you said that about me. I love words, and they connect in a sort of rhythm, a sort of dance, a sort of flow for me.
Mhm.
I love all of these kind of ideas and thoughts. I realize this, that I think, do people actually want creativity or creative thinking in a situation? Or do people prefer a command and control structure because that's what they're used to?
Mhm.
So in a family meeting, do people turn around and go, what does everyone think? At work, do they bring in a management consultant to talk to people, produce a report that can then tick a shareholder box, and you just carry on doing what you did anyway? So do you actually move on from this? So one of the realizations I had was 500 years ago, being creative could have got you exiled or executed. So I
Mhm.
actually think maybe many people that were accused of being witches just did something different. And if you were male, your version was typically you'll end up being a traitor, you know, saying
Mhm.
horrific things like, the earth goes around the sun. And who knows, in 500 years' time, we might find something completely different. But openness wasn't welcomed. What was welcomed was following majority religion and majority governance. So in the UK, it would have been church and state. And that's who you follow. So the one thing I've had to unlearn, well, there's two things. One is expectation, because I've never planned a day and it's gone according to plan. So I realize there's a realization that comes from this, which is my biggest dissatisfaction in life comes from a small gap. And it's between what I want to happen and what actually happens.
Mhm.
So I want to have a pie for dinner, but the shops run out of pies. And then people make a TikTok video of them swearing. Or then you bring it into people. I wanted my child to do this, and he did this. I wanted my wife or girlfriend or, partner to recognize I wanted this for my birthday. And instead of buying me a drill set, they bought me a knitting kit.
Mm.
Whatever it is,
That's all good.
that's one thing that we need to recognize, that we need to unlearn, is expectation. And when you start to bring it into bigger parts of life,
Mhm.
yeah, I was top of the class. I aced my university exams. I expected to marry well and, have a great career, and that my husband would have a great career, and I'd have 2.5 children and, 3.5 cars and whatever it is. Expectations are set in from a very, very early age.
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the other thing that I realized is that, because someone asked me a beautiful question, And I realized I was asking it of people when I interview and do podcasts, but if you could change one thing in life, what would you change? And my
Mhm.
addition would be, if you had a Harry Potter wand, what would you change? And it gives a beautiful example because it's getting people beyond a limitation. I've got a Harry Potter wand now, I can change anything. And you get some beautifully creative reflections. So when Katerina, my friend who was doing the podcast, asked me that question, I just fell still for a moment. And the answer that came up was, I, I would change the only thing I can actually change. And she kind of sat forward, and audience sort of sat forward. And I said, myself. And here's the
Mhm.
good news, I don't need a Harry Potter wand to do that. So that's the only thing I can change, myself and my reaction to things. The fact
Mhm.
that my, girlfriend didn't get me a hammer drill, or I wanted the knitting set and she got me the drill instead. Or that, whatever it is, my cat climbed up a tree when I was trying to go to sleep. Or that, quite simply, meetings didn't go the way they want, or that I didn't feel fulfilled today.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine who's in her 70s, she's an amazing fashion designer. She said her way of addressing it is to, at the end of each day, look at those things, just
Mhm.
acknowledge them and leave them, good or bad. Look, acknowledge, leave. So I think that's a really powerful way. So I know you asked a question about what it is. I think I also feel the need to share how to, one way of walking through that, one way of progressing.
Yeah, I'm very taken by this idea of like this, like what are the things that we expect, and 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 uh and stating it's like these are the things that I want got back, and then it's that those expectations that we may have of others, or that others have put on us, as to what we thought we'd get out of this thing that we've done, either for ourselves or for others, or because we thought we should do this because that's what we've learned is the what we thought was the right thing to do. The how do you quantify that? Because it might not be at that
Yeah.
moment in time to know. In the case of how you talked about with Muhammad, it was like, wow, you saw that right away from how what he told you happened, but also the experience you saw with the others in the room with him, which you kind of saw their emotion, you saw their interaction, you saw how their voice, what
Yeah.
they were able to accomplish, changed.
Yeah.
And that I find is always so telling, because before I would ask that series of questions, I'd get these quantitative responses based on questions I may pose, qualitative feedback. And then, and I'd say about the one thing you change if you could, that I always find that that in itself gives me this response that can be so unexpected on my part. I was reminded as you were talking is that it can be very much about what that person assumed that they were going to experience or have based on what others had provided to them, or pressure they might have put on themselves, or that it was something that they were reminded of that may be not actually even about what they were just
Mm.
doing. And I'll give you a better example of that, and this is related to what you talked about, and creativity and education, is that for the first time in a few years, I actually taught a course in person before Christmas. And I found that the students, surprising not in a good way to me, was that it was about user research, going through a process. I would talk about my way of working, work alongside. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. This
Yeah.
is all about reiterating, making mistakes, feeling comfortable with ambiguity, and that you might not get it perfect the first time, but that was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And that was very uncomfortable for most, if not all, of the
Yeah.
students, in a way that be like, no, I need to, what are the step by step? How do I know that I will be successful? I'm like, you don't. You don't know that you're going to be successful, and that's okay. It's like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, it's not. Because I need to know what I need to do in order to get this mark. Because that was how they quantified their success based on expectations of themselves and that others had of them. And that was very difficult. And it was very abrasive conversations with most to help them, from my point of view, to say, this is how I teach, this is how we work, this is how we do design, this is
Yeah.
how we do research. And that this is a learning process about yourself and others, putting yourself in the shoes, but being truly empathetic for those that you're designing for. You don't know, especially when you're learning, what is
Yeah.
the correct way. And that's okay. Those that were the most abrasive initially come back to me and say, you know what? I'll give you two accounts. This was the first time, these are students, 25, 26. One said to me, this was the first time since, I'm getting shivers down my back. This was the first time since I was 8 years old, how they remembered that they were 8, that I did not feel when I was at school that I had to be perfect, that I could do something, and that the way that I would get feedback and that I would be evaluated would be based on the mistakes and the things that I did versus what I was told to do. It was a really hard class.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
so difficult because it's like I had to change the way that I taught, the way that I thought, where I thought, this isn't about, like, I am not being able to lead this in the way that I want to share my knowledge, share my process. And it's like, what am I missing here? And I thought, I'm missing this different way of thinking and evaluating oneself. And also that I got to keep going with this because it's important to me. I don't want
Yeah.
people to feel perfect. I don't want to give you the step-by-step guide because there isn't one. You got to go through it. I'm evaluating on your process and your openness to explore and discover and learn more about yourself and others by thinking this way. What really resonated with me with what you said was that I want and what I expect. But I wonder with that is, how do you frame it then, where it's, how do you help express what you need in response? How does that work when you're the one that's vulnerable and giving and you're the leader, but you might not get what you want or need because maybe you're not able to express that, because then how
Yeah.
people will see you later, you're going, I'm going to teach you, you need to give me this in response. It's like, but they don't know how because they haven't gone through the
Yeah.
process yet. So maybe that's yet
So,
to be determined.
so I think communication and clear and empathic communication, is at the heart of it. So I think I love the story of the 25-year-old reflecting on their 8-year-old self, because in that is one of the dichotomies we're talking about. So it's creative education. How are you taught creativity? And is it taught? Because, 1 + 1 is 2. If it's 11, that's wrong. But I don't know your reasoning as to why it's 11. But, and yeah, there's a mathematical construct, there's a lesson program, but, what does that allow for? In the child is the seed of the adult. And when you are taught that at age 8, of course, when you're 25, you'll have the experience when someone like you is saying, no, there is no right or wrong answer. And by the way, I've got a few of my own stories there. A 19-year-old student in Hong Kong were doing a 10-week program on designing for older people. And he came to the inclusive design masterclass that I was running. We did a bit of creative leadership. And anyway, he said to me afterwards, I came to this because my tutor told me to, not because I know you. And I said, thank you for the clarity. I don't expect everyone to know me at all. And I'm here, but I don't know what this is going to be of use to me. So I was like, it's a good question. It may not be the friendliest question, but it's a good question. And I said, what's worrying you? He goes, you didn't tell us what to design. So we drilled it down to that. Am I designing a kitchen or a bathroom for older people? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, no, but you're the professor. You need to tell us. I can design, I can get you 10 drawings by the end of the week. But so I said to him, how do you know I won't fail you because you've done a bathroom design for older people. That it's in your head. Are you older? Have you gone and talked to older people? Have you channeled this? Have you lived? Have you looked? And he goes, no, but I know. So I was like, draw me right now. You say you're a designer, draw me right now something. So he drew something and I critiqued the hell out of it. And I said, that's lesson number one. You don't know everything. You may think you do. I don't. I absolutely don't. So how do we go and find that out? You go out into context, you talk to people. It's all the stuff I was telling you in the user research lecture. And he goes, or like took notes. So I was like, great, you've taken notes. You're a good student. And I said, number two in all of this is that you actually have to leave the studio and you actually, I said, do you trust me? And I said, if you trust me, go out. Because if you design stuff like you just scribbled, I'll fail you. If you trust me, go out. And if you didn't have a good experience, I'll give you an A. So, so he went out and he came back the next day, literally eyes wide, mind blown. And he became the chief of the user research group. And we actually lost him for 2 weeks because he kept on going out and talking to people. And he was like, people give you so many good ideas. I was like, that's it. So unlearn, going back to the question you asked, that word, unlearn what you were taught, that 1 + 1 is always 2. Go out into the world and you'll learn what 1 + 1 means to people. Because it could mean 1 + 1 was me and my husband, and I lost him 5 years ago and I feel very alone. What does that mean for your kitchen and bathroom design? Question. So he became the biggest advocate of inclusive design and creative leadership ever.
What I've learned from here, it's like we really mean it's not just about truly designing with people rather than simply for them, but it's like designing with alongside them, but also helping them see the impact they make and change expectations they have of themselves and keep making progress that way. Thank you, Rama, for joining me today. I can't wait to talk again. Many conversations to come.
Yeah,
And
I think it feels like the first of many.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we went through a podcast in May 2026 without mentioning the words artificial intelligence.
Maybe that could be a next one, hey?
Right.
Love it. Yeah, that's true. Hey, that's a first because many of my last conversations have been all about that.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining, and thanks to everyone
My
for listening
pleasure.
to Design with Ren and with the fabulous Rama this time around. And if this conversation resonated with you, subscribe, share this episode, join us as we continue to explore the people, the systems, ideas shaping more thoughtful futures through design. Until next time, let's stay in touch, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks for watching Design with Ren, where we explore what it means to create with care, context, and intention. If this sparks something for you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's designing for change. Want more? New episodes drop regularly, and you'll find resources, tools, and behind-the-scenes thinking right here on the channel. Keep designing with purpose, and I'll see you in the next one.